Hey there, what's up, and welcome to Lesson 8 in the Pro Tools 2022 ebook. Finally, we're diving into the mix window a little bit. We're going to open up the mix window and do something called static mix. So let's dive into it. Okay, getting started. Oh, let's make this a little bigger. There we go. Getting started. Okay. So we are going to do Lesson 8 Low Roar in the Pro Tools exercise folder. Pro Tools 101 exercise folder. So go to Lesson 8, open it up, and Lesson 8 Low Roar. Okay, and the first thing you want to do, as always, File, Save As. Save it, and as you can see, it automatically goes to the folder from which it came. But just give it your initials at the end. Okay, because we always want to save the original in case we need to go back. Okay, so as you can see, there are tracks that are roughly grouped as 3 vocal tracks, 1 effects track, 2 guitar tracks, 4 percussion tracks, 3 string tracks, 2 tracks of bass, and 6 tracks of drums. So this is a a good example of a music session, and it's good in the sense that there are things that are in categories. There's 3 tracks, but they're all vocals. There's 6 tracks, but they're all drums. There's 2 tracks, but they're strings. Things like that. Same with cinema. There could be like 20 dialogue tracks, but they're all dialogue. There could be 3 music tracks, but they're all music. There could be 56 sound effects tracks, but they're all sound effects. So we're going to put them into sub-mix groups because, as you'll see, when you go up to Window, down to Mix, all of these are faders. Check it out. See this? Lead vocal, background vocal, mangled vocal. Let's go to the mix window, under window, lead vocal, background vocal, mangled vocal. Whatever you see in the edit window is what you see in the mix window. But when you're mixing and you want to move a bunch of faders at once, it's kind of hard to do when all you have a mouse and you're like, oh, I need to bring down my vocals. Okay, it'd be easier to put them in a subgroup. Then I can control all those faders with one subgroup fader. So that's basically what's going to happen in this lesson. So we're going to skip to section 2. Just talks about how to set up your mixing environment, and this is good. What they're talking about is open up your transport window. So when you're in your edit window, all your playback controls, like right here, easy to find. But when you're in your mix window, it's like, wait, where's the play button? Where's the stop button? So what we'd like to do is, when we're in the mix window, go up to Window and go down to Transport. Now, all the clocks that I want to see, and whatever time frame I want. We'll talk about pre-roll and all this stuff later in the semester. But all the stuff that I'm missing in the edit window is now here in the mix window. So just put this somewhere where it's easy to spot. It's kind of hard, but there we go. There we go. So now we'll go to step 3, creating a static mix. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that loop playback is on. What is loop playback? Well, it's pretty much what it says. Let's go back to the edit window. Oh, we're here now. Go up to Options at the top and scroll about 1/3 of the way down to loop playback. And when I click on that, watch what happens to this play button right here when I turn it on. It turns into a play button with a little loop around it. What does that do? Well, with the selector, let's just select something, hit play, and watch what happens. Oops. It loops it. This is good because when you're editing, you're going to be working on stuff, little snippets, and you have to play it over and over again until you get it just right. Like you're going to trim off a frame here, add a frame there. It's going to be very minute adjustments. So always going up to hit the play button to hear your work, it just gets tiresome. Just select the area you're working on, work on it, and just have it play back on. So we've turned that on. Okay, let's go back into the edit window. I'm sorry, the mix window. There we go. So in the mix window, there's this, if you scroll all the way down, you'll see these little, basically like blank gray squares. Just click in one of them. This is the comments box. The comments box exists in the edit window as well. Oops. You could just say, great track. Go to the edit window. View, edit window views, comments. And look, great track. Where I wrote that in there, it's in the edit window. Comments boxes, remember, are really good ways to sort of leave yourself notes for things you need to do. Also, in the edit window, you'll see there's these S and M buttons. These also exist in the, oops, there we go. In the mix window, S is for solo, M is for mute. What that means is if I want to hear just one track and none of the others, I solo it. If I want to hear all of the tracks, but I don't want to hear, in this case, the glockenspiel, I mute it. So it's still there, but I'm not hearing it. But if I solo it, isn't that pretty? Then I hear just that. It's a really good way when you have a lot of tracks to figure out what's going on. If something sounds weird, or something sounds not right, go through and solo the tracks or mute tracks to figure out where the problem lies. Let's see here. So static mixes. Static mixes are, as he says here, they are rarely the final mix. What it is it's kind of like a pre-mix. So what we're going to be doing is this. We are going to go category by category and solo them. For example, this is a vocal, this is a vocal, this is a vocal. So we're going to solo, 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 those three tracks. And now when we play it, all we hear are those tracks. So now we're going to create a static mix. What's a static mix? It's a mix where you set the levels for tracks and the levels stay there. They stay static. So in this case, I want the lead vocal to be up, I want the background vocal to be a little lower, and I want the mangled vocal to be a little bit in between, like that. I would suggest you do the same. And then I just play it. Maybe I want this louder. Maybe I want it quieter. Maybe I just want a lot of mangled vocal. It's kind of cool, but we should probably have some regular lead vocal in there too. So that's what they're talking about in this chapter. Go through section by section and just sort of listen. Close your eyes and listen and determine, what do you want the vocal section to sound like? When that's done, unsolo them and go on down to the sound effects track. Hit solo there. Listen to this. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's going on. If you're ever playing it and you're like, how come there's nothing there? Go back to your edit window and look at your sound effects track. Sound effects track is very sparse. So what I would do is I would click in an area of the sound effects track where it looks like there's going to be some sound. Then go back to the mix window, hit play, and determine how loud do I want this. I think this is good as is, so we're just going to keep the fader at 0. Now, unsolo that. Now we've got the guitars. We've got 2 acoustic guitars. Actually, no, you know what? Let's go down to the drums. We're only going to do about half of this exercise. We've got kicks, rim, hi-hat, live drums, crash. Let's see here. And then break, and then break. So let's solo break, solo crash, solo drums, solo the hi-hat, solo the rim shot, solo the kicks. Now, this is where you can really close your eyes and listen to each of the individual drums and determine how should the drum set sound as a whole. What should be louder? What should be quieter? What should be in the middle? You determine that with these faders. I'll give you some hints here. Kick drums are always very, very loud, so you'll probably want to bring that down a little bit. I love the sound of the crash, but they tend to be loud as well, so you should probably bring that down a little bit. Live drums, those tend to be the drums in the room. I would keep those where they are. I want them nice and loud. Hi-hat tends to be, in my opinion, a little tinny. I'll just bring it down a little bit. And rim shot, I would bring that down. Actually, I would leave it there because rim shots are supposed to be like, it should be very like crisp and out in front. And then the break, I'm not sure what that is. I guess we'll find out. Now, one thing I will say is this. See where it says 0 right here? Every track has sort of a decibel count, if you will. 0 represents the volume at which it was recorded, and when you go down, that is how many decibels you're taking away. When you go up, that's how many decibels you are increasing it. So if you want to make a track louder than it was recorded, basically if you want to give it a boost, you go above 0. If a track you feel is going to be too loud in the mix, you probably want to go a little below 0 or a lot below 0. Again, use your ears. However, we don't really want to go above 0 unless we have to, because when something is recorded, it's usually recorded at a very loud, with a very loud gain or a very high gain. So if you push the fader up, you could risk distorting the signal by making it louder than it was when it was recorded. So you don't want to do that unless something was recorded super quietly to begin with. So my point is, try not to go above 0 unless something is so quiet that the meters never really get up there too far. If anything, you want to be turning stuff down below 0. And if something is really loud and you like where it is, leave it where it is and don't turn it up. Like you see this right here, you see how loud that is? If I boost this right here, these are my overall levels down here. When I boost that, look how much it's hitting into the red. When I bring this back down, it's not getting into the red as much. So that's what I mean. If something is already this loud to begin with, we don't want to boost it because it's going to push the whole mix into the red, which we don't want. This is where we start wrapping our minds around what mixing is. So if you're still deciding how to set up your drums, set them up the way I did here. Bring your kicks down a little bit, bring your keep your live drums where they are, bring the hi-hat down a little bit, keep the rim shot up where it was at 0, and bring the crash down. So crash down to about 10, live drums at 0, rim shot at 0, kicks at -10, hi-hat at -5, and keep the break at 0. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to skip around this exercise a little bit, because what this exercise is doing, they're going to have you do the same thing, but for every category of instrument. I think you just need to do it for vocals and drums, and you got it. So what do we do now? Well, let's see. Let's make a subgroup. Using auxiliary input tracks creates subgroups. So we're going to create a subgroup for the vocals called Vox sub, and a vocals subgroup for drums called drum sub. So let's go back into the mix window. Trivia question. I'm going to create a new track. I want this new track to go after the very last track here, which is kick stem. How do I ensure that happens? Click on the track where you want the new track to go. So click on the nameplate, like I did here. Go up to track, new. In this case, we're making a new aux track. I'm going to review what an aux track is in just a second. New stereo, aux input, and the name will be drums sub. And watch what happens. Remember, this is an aux input track. What we're about to do will not work if it's not an aux input track. Look at that. Boom. Now, let's create a Vox sub track. But I want that to go right after the Vox tracks. So let's go all the way back here. Vocals are also known as Vox, V-O-X. So I want this Vox track to go after this third track. So what do? I click on that third track's nameplate, go up to track, new stereo, aux input, Vox sub, and watch what happens. Puts it right there. So let's start with that. Let's start with the vocals here. So we've learned a little bit about what I/O means, input, output. As you can see, on my computer, every track has an output, every track has an input. If I want to record on this track, I click on the input and I select my microphone interface. Right now, everything is going out to my MacBook Pro speakers. That is how we're able to hear. If I hit play, I'm hearing all of these tracks because all of them are outputting to the MacBook Pro speakers. But what if I want these three tracks to be controlled by this track, Vox sub? Then I need to make sure that these actually don't go straight out to my speakers. I need to make sure they go to the Vox sub, because if they go to the Vox sub, then the Vox sub will control them. For those of you who are in programming, this is basically what we call a parent-child relationship. This track will be the parent, and these tracks will be the children. So this track will control these three tracks. How do you do that? By putting these three tracks on a bus. In Pro Tools, and pretty much any audio interface you'll be dealing with, if you want a track to get sent to another track for processing before it hits your speakers, it has to be put on a bus. Think about it like, hey, I'm going across town. I gotta get on a bus. So on this output for this first lead vocal track, click on it, and you see we have output, but below that we have something that says bus. And there's all these buses. Since this is a stereo situation, we want bus 1, 2, left, right. Bus 1, 2, bus left, right. That's what it means. So bus 1, 2, stereo. This second one, output, bus 1, 2, stereo. This third track, output, bus 1, 2, stereo. We want them to all go to this aux track. Now think about when you get on a bus. It says like 217 Pico Fairfax. That lets you know that's where the bus is going. This bus is called bus 1 and 2, and it's going to a place called bus 1 and 2. Well, where's bus 1 and 2? It's here. The output will go to an input called bus 1 and 2. I'll do that again. Here's the output on the aux track. These 3 vocals have been sent on a bus called bus 1 and 2. So we're going to put them, we're going to go to this aux track, and we're going to call its input bus 1 and 2. And what that does is, that tells these 3 tracks to get on a bus, and it's going to go to a place called bus 1, 2. Goes out on bus 1, 2, and goes in on bus 1, 2. And then look at the output of the aux track. It's my MacBook Pro speakers. So what's happening is these 3 tracks are getting routed into this track, which will let me control these 3 tracks, and then the result of that will go out to my speakers. So let's hear what that sounds like. Go ahead and solo these 3 vocal tracks and this new vocal aux track that we have. And the reason we're doing that is just so we can hear what I'm talking about. So go ahead and hit play. So you hear this? Now put your mouse over the fader of the aux track and bring it down. Oh yeah, I left the drums on, but you get the idea. I brought the fader down on this Vox subtrack, and all of the vocals have gone down. Why? Because they're all bussed into this track. Hear that? Now they're all up. Now they're all down. Pretty cool, huh? This is a submix. This is a Vox submix. Let's try it again, but for the drums. Go down to the drums. How do we get these drums into a submix that is controlled by the drum sub fader? Put them on a bus. So break 2, output. Now bus 1 and 2 is already being used. They're all, that's a bus, it's full up. That bus is gonna pass the depot. It's not gonna stop here. You gotta wait for the next one. So in this case, we're gonna do bus 3, 4. This one, 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 bus 3, 4. And this one, bus 3, 4. And remember, these are all on a bus called bus 3, 4, and they're going to a place called bus 3, 4. Where is bus 3, 4? Where is the bus depot for that? Right here. Going to the drum submix track. Its input will be called bus 3, 4. Now hit play and watch what happens when I bring down the drum sub track. Listen to the drums. All the drums are gone. You can still hear the vocals. But as you can see, all these drums are happening, but I brought the volume down. Let's bring it up. There are those drums. Let's bring them down. See why that's easy? Because if you were mixing something and you want to bring the drums down, you would have to go and that wouldn't work. Instead, feed them all, route them all into one track, and control it from here. One more note. I'm going to go back to, let's go ahead and go back to your edit window and just select an area, I would say between about a third of the way through, right here. And just have it set. Just select it. We want to play this on loop. So let's listen to it. Okay, we've got inserts here. Now remember, like I said, this drum subtrack controls all of these tracks. So check this out. We don't talk about it in this chapter, I don't think, but I'm going to do it because I think this will really lock it into your brain. On the drum subtrack, scroll up to the beginning, or it's up to the top, and if you don't see something that says inserts here, go up to View, Mix Window Views, and choose Inserts A to E. But if you see it there, that's fine. You don't have to do it. Okay, we're going to add an insert. What are inserts again? Plugin effects. Effects that basically color the sound so it sounds, you know, cooler than it already does. So click on this first blank insert right here. Multi-channel plugin. EQ, dynamics, reverb, pitch shift. These are all things we can do to shape the sound into something different. Let's go down to reverb. I probably have a lot more stuff than you've got on your computer, or maybe you have more than I do. Who knows? But don't worry. Just go over to Deverb. I'm sure we all have Deverb. Click on that. This pops up. Now this is, remember, like virtual instruments? Every plugin or every insert has a preset and a factory default list, which will let us choose basically a preset. So click on it and scroll up. So reverb adds basically space to the sound. Do we want this to sound, do we want the drums to sound like they are boomy? Do we want them to sound like they're in a large room? Do you want them to sound like they are in a small hall? Let's choose large church dark. Now we'll close this window. Now I want you to note, this is on the aux track. That means all of these drums are feeding into or routing into this drum submix track. This fader is controlling the volume for all of them, and because we've added an effect, an insert effect to the drum submix track, this effect is also affecting all of these drums. Let's listen. Can you hear it? I'm going to turn off the vocals so you can really hear it. All of the drums now have this effect applied to them because all these tracks are fed into this one, and so whatever's going on this track affects whatever has been fed into it, which happens to be all the drums. That's a pretty extreme effect, so let's click on it. And where it says large church dark, let's click on that, and let's choose something a little easier. Let's choose low rent. Pretty interesting, huh? So anything we add to this track will affect everything that's being fed into it. Super cool. So that is basically submixing. Submixing is a submix is an aux track that controls a static mix that is fed into it. That is what is going on in this chapter. This exercise, like I said, they're having you do other things like adding a master fader. What a master fader does is, let's see here. Let's see what they say here. Okay, there you go. So let's just do this because this will be something we tackle later on. Click on drum sub, go up to track, new, create new stereo. Where'd you go? Master fader, and we'll call this main mon, which stands for main monitor. So what a master fader is, you'll notice that the master fader's output is my speakers. There are no other choices. Oop. I can put it on a bus, but you can see there's no input. Why is that? Because the master fader is basically the end of the line. Everything goes through a master fader. There's more, it's a little more nuanced than that, but at this point, all you gotta know is a master fader, everything goes through it. So I'm gonna just go ahead and turn everything on. You see this right here? The master fader shows me my levels for the entire mix. And not only that, when I bring the master fader down, it brings down everything. If I bring it up, it brings up the whole mix. The master fader is the master. It controls everything. But the reason why we like it, hold on one second here. Okay, so let me play this again. There you go. So, as you can see, I can see when I'm playing it that I'm really close to being in the red. That's the other thing the master fader does. All these adjustments I've made feed into the final mix, and it's possible that I pushed it too far, and I pushed it too far, I could be in danger of being in the red. And in the red, you start hearing distortion, right? So the master fader is kind of that's what they call a main monitor. You're monitoring how loud your audio is, and this determines, maybe just turn the whole thing down. Or maybe there's something in here that's really loud. Maybe this is too loud. Maybe this is too loud. Maybe my drums are too loud. I'll just bring them down a little bit. You can see as I've done that, it's actually it's now, oh, look at that, yeah. It's now just staying around this area and not hitting the red. So this lets you know basically what you need to do to keep your mix basically healthy and not in the red. And it lets you control the volume for the whole thing. More on that later though in later lessons. So if you've done this, then all you really need to do is take a photograph of this mix window screen. You don't need to take a photograph of the edit window screen, just the mix window screen. I want to see that you have done the submixes. I want to see that you've used buses, and send me that, and you're good on this assignment. Thanks, guys.